Hi, hello everyone, welcome in. My name is Jer. We are talking about Drag Race Season 17. It's still crazy that we have 17 seasons. We are talking about episode 3, Monopulence. Or, as I like to call it, Monopolins. I need a supercut of RuPaul doing that Vogue walk on All Stars 6, mixed with Mercedes saying, Opulence! Ooh, this is probably one of the strongest, if not the strongest design challenge across every franchise, because everyone was good except for 2. These girls came prepared to create something, and I love that. We gotta talk about some stones that were brought from outside the workroom. We gotta talk about some people getting on people's nerves. We gotta talk about the Chismosa corner, and so much more. So let's get into it. The room feels pretty mid about Hormona still being here. And TBQH, as someone who's done competitions before and people didn't go home, I got frustrated because I just wanted to see the competition get whittled down so that we could get closer to the end. I understand that frustration. I have been that queen before. And I completely agree with Corey on that opinion. Last week's variety show was kind of frustrating to watch because the second half I feel was weaker than the first half and someone objectively should have gone home. Lip syncing is definitely a talent and not everyone can do it, but it's not really variety if everyone's doing the same thing. And in my personal opinion, I think that they should reserve the talent/variety shows only for All Stars and Versus the World. I think when you're still early in figuring out who you are as a TV presence, your brand isn't really stamped, so it's hard to go in and share that. But the second time on Drag Race, where people know your look, they know your style, they've got some catchphrases that you said, it's so much easier to incorporate a brand that time. So I feel like putting them in the main line is kind of a disservice to the queens in particular. I almost wish that they would do a lip sync smackdown for episode 1, similar to what they did in maybe season 13. Do a twist where the winner picks the team they want to be on that they think won the previous lip sync. Hormona reads Joella down, and the two of these girls are here to make TV. I honestly think a lot of these girls are here to make TV, and I'm really impressed with the fact that they are willing to be so open about their feelings. Because many seasons of Drag Race have just sort of felt like big campfire club, everyone's just gonna get along and then we'll have our beef in private so that we don't get attacked by the fans. There's a phenomenon in Drag Race right now where if you go on the show, that's not a golden ticket like it used to be from maybe season 5 to maybe about season 12. And I think now that there's so much Drag Race going on doesn't guarantee you anything. So either you go into Drag Race and be nice and congenial and no one really remembers you and you don't get booked, or you act like a drag queen and maybe you'll get a couple extra bookings and people will be grumpy with you, but at least they'll remember you. It's a catch-22 and it really depends on how much you think you can handle off the show mentally from these people who really don't have any actual stakes in your life. So I'm glad that they're making TV this season. And all the girls are talking about not wanting to be the pork chop queen. Yet another controversial opinion. If you are the first out in a franchise, you are the pork chop. Pork chop, juice box, the Macarena. When you're the 3rd, 4th, or 5th to go out first, you're not a pork chop queen. Only the first of that series is. You're the Venus Delight, the Elisa Summers, the penetration of your season. And that's just a personal opinion of mine. Our main challenge is to design garments inspired by the luxness of Monopoly. This is so fun. It's very Project Runway coded, and I love that Drag Race is starting to move in this direction. And I hope we see more sponsors from outside the show start to tap into what Drag Race is and inspire challenges going forward. So they each have to draw cards from a chest, and whatever they get is the color they're going to design for. And each one of them also get a small cash prize, which initially I thought, $200, that's garbage. But then I did the math for everything that we saw, and it was about $3,490, which is kind of substantial for a cash prize. But once it's all divvied out to all 14 queens, it seems a little paltry. And the idea of this design challenge is to create something opulent. When I think opulence, I think jewels, accessories, shine, sparkle, not tacky, clean cuts, clean silhouettes. I'm thinking big scale, but fitted to you. I think the fabrics were so nice. Sometimes they give them these fabrics to design and they're ugly. They lack sparkle, they lack interest, they have a bad design, they're bulky. There's always something just slightly wrong about some of the fabrics that the queens are given, or they're just tacky looking. And I appreciated that all of these fabrics, from what we saw, looked pretty luxe. Even the color saturation of them was juicy. And I think there was a huge missed opportunity from Lucky not doing a reference to James St. James getting the St. James Place card. Lucky being a club kid, this could have been the perfect opportunity to riff off of some of their most iconic looks. And so that was honestly the biggest disappointment to me, on top of the fact that they didn't know how to use a sewing machine. Being able to use unconventional materials is perfect for Drag Race because a lot of queens can. But you also have to know how to use traditional materials, how to work a sewing machine, because that's easier, in my opinion, of a skill than unconventional materials. Because there's more manipulation in materials you use. Items and objects that don't have bend or stretch, you have to know how to create something structural that has movement, that has interest without it being too big. I think another big thing about this challenge is that it's a great opportunity for you to solidify your personal brand. Because it's just supposed to be something opulent, it doesn't have to look like it came from someone else. It has to be whatever your drag inspo is in the most expensive version that would look like. So I think there were a lot of opportunities here that I think a lot of these girls reached for. Rue has devolved into calling Lydia just butthole now, which tells me that Lydia is probably gonna go pretty far in the competition, similar to Ivy Winters. And I'm now completely unsurprised that Lydia got the invite to All Stars 10 before this season even aired. Rue is totally gagged at Acacia calling the 80s olden days. But you think about it, and that's 45 years ago from today. I'm not good at math, I'm not a scientist. But I remember being a kid in the 90s, and we called the 50s, which was about that same time period away, the olden days. This is such a moment where I realize that Rue is completely out of touch with drag these days, because her reference points are 70s, 80s, 90s, and her point of view hasn't evolved that much to the point where she can't even see the 80s as being old. And speaking of Rue, that executive producer, she drops off receipts of all the rated queens to the room to distract them even further from this design challenge. Was this sabotage? I believe so. To be honest, there's not a lot to talk about from this. I think it was pretty standard what we already knew. We were previously aware that Lana and Ariete were in an alliance together. The room is now just being clued into that too. Here's the thing. Drag Race has been a social game for many years, maybe even season 3 with the Heathers versus the Boogers. Alliances, friendships, enemies get you a long way in the competition. Figuring out ways to tap into the room to make the energy shift the way that you need it to is a critical part of a competition reality show. It's a critical part of a drag show. That's applicable even in the nightclubs, where if you're friends with the host, you're not gonna have to open or close the show. You'll get the nice comfortable middle spot when the tips are starting to get warm. You won't have to set the energy bar. That is a part of nightclub life. So the fact that the girls are still coming in and are gagged that there are alliances forming, it's kind of funny to me. I also feel like a lot of them hammed up their responses for the camera because no one went home. There's no stakes to how people voted. It's an opportunity for you to say, okay, you voted me low. That means I have to get on your good side. Keep your enemies close, right? And I think dropping off these receipts is a great way to generate sparks in the workroom and make everyone get a little more staticky as they move forward in the competition. Speaking of which, during the design portion, we have a little bit of a kerfuffle. Anya asks Jules if she can use the trim that she's using. Jules says no, and Anya uses it anyway. This has happened in Project Runway, where designers are working in a team together and they're planning on using one fabric, and their teammate takes that fabric to work on their own garment. Usually nothing is said and they move on and just get fumey with each other. I'm not here to police anyone's behavior, only to commentate on it. I think this is sort of a litmus test for who you are as a person. It's sort of like when they tell you at the grocery store to put away your own cart and you just leave it by the cars. If you ask someone, can I use this? They say no, and you do it anyway. It's more of a testament to who you are as a person than anything else. I feel like in a competition you have to put yourself first, but also there's a level of sportsmanship that happens in a competition. And if someone has claimed stake to something and you take it anyway, regardless of if they gave you permission or not, what is that truly saying? And to say, well, you have this, but I need it more, I don't know if that is the best attitude to go forward with in a game that is social. And there's so much to break down about this, and I'm trying to be careful to not be mean. Because again, I'm not here to police anyone's behavior. But I do think it's bad manners to have acted that way. And I think that is gonna come and bite Anya in the butt later on in the competition. There was a rogue comment last week from Anya, maybe it was 2 weeks ago, about not really knowing if she could trust anyone in the room, feeling like maybe she stood out from the group. That was retained in the edit for a reason, and I feel like that's gonna come into play later in the game. That was left in as a breadcrumb that something is going to happen where Anya is going to feel especially left out, or especially isolated, or especially feeling betrayed by the group. I'm anticipating that just based off that comment and what happened here. Because the reality is because this is an edited show, they're gonna focus on storylines that have the biggest payout. Rue's production team is very good about doing that, where they're not so good about that in some of the international seasons. And especially with some of these corners like Jules and Arietti being close with each other, and Arietti and Lana being close with each other, there's gonna be more girls in the workroom who are gonna feel frustrated about this incident, and that could end up hurting the end game of Anya. And that's not the only drama this episode, because Hormona pulled in Jules from her suitcase to use in her garment. And Lexi calls her out and tells her, you can't do that. Here's my opinion. The outside stones would not have mattered unless they did. Because let's be real, there are like 50 people running around those rooms. There are producers, there are story editors, there are people with clipboards and interns and camera people, XYZ plus RuPaul watching from a candid camera somewhere in another room. If one of these girls brought in something from the outside and applied it to their garment, and production did not like that queen, they would get swarmed within seconds being told to put it away and to not use it. But if they saw that someone that they did like, they did care for, they did want to be there doing something like that, they would sort of look away. There have been so many times in the entertainment business that I've worked in where if someone was doing something they shouldn't have done, if they were well liked in the room, we just let them do it. But if we didn't like them, we were ready with our clipboard in hand taking notes, giving them performance feedback, and then reporting it to the managers. That's just how it works. It's petty and it's catty, but that's entertainment. So should we finally get into this runway? I really love Rue's dress this week. I like that it incorporates a lot of the colors from the challenge. And I personally enjoy when Rue dresses to the theme. I think back to season 7, one of her best fashion seasons, where she wore that beautiful gold lame for Despy Awards, which worked so perfect for the assignment. And then that tacky crushed velvet with the painted naked Rue on the panther for the ugliest dress ever, because even though it was beautiful, there was something tacky and ugly about it in its own beautiful Zaldi way. And so this garment being squares with the multicolors on it was really fun for the assignment. This hair needed like a hairband or a tie or something, because the way that it was pulled back was so open and large. It seemed like something was missing right here. So I'm going to be doing something a little bit different as we go forward, and as I talk about the girls, I'm going to be placing them in the ranking I thought they sat at. I tried my best to sort of sit down with this after the fact and really look hard at it. There may be some people in positions that I don't totally feel the same about anymore, but those safe girls are kind of all in flux. So I'll address them based on how they were posted on Instagram, not how they came out on the runway. We got Acacia Forgot out here doing a trashy, tacky dynasty look. In my opinion, this was reading very Dolly Parton. I quite like a cap sleeve, and I think this fabric she used with the lace was nice. She captured that tacky element perfectly. If I were looking at someone who took inspiration from that era and wanted to intentionally go trashy tacky, I see the inspiration. If a sex worker was doing opulence at some type of porn red carpet, I would think this looks quite good on them. But there'd probably be a lot more removed from the bottom half. For me, this is sort of in the 9th position. It's on the lower end of safe because I don't think it looks rich. But I also think it's decently constructed. We have Arietti, who wanted to give a Real Housewife of Mexico City. I freaking love this hair, man. This hair is so damn good, and that mug is unstoppable. This is the mug of the season, and I cannot wait to see what else she does. The overall cut of this dress looks so well done. I can't believe that she actually made this and didn't bring it from outside. This is exciting to me, that someone can create a garment that is this well done and still incorporate their own unique POV. This was number one for me. And this very much should have been the winner, in my opinion. Next up is Crystal Envy in what I think is very jet set looking. I think the cut of it is pretty simple. I think it does read opulent. However, the floppy bows on the side sort of make me want to giggle fashion-wise. I don't take them extremely seriously. I don't really know where those could have been incorporated so that they didn't feel gimmicky, but they have a sort of silly point of view to them, which doesn't read opulent to me. And overall, her look is quite serious and formal. Maybe those bows could have been higher up on the shoulders or somewhere else, but that placement of them doesn't feel opulent to me. And I think maybe it could have used just a couple more stones up here on the neckline. To me, this was at number 7 because it was extremely safe looking. We've got Hormona Lisa in what she called a princess goldfish look. I think this is a pretty standard mermaid dress. I really love the ruffles at the bottom. A lot of queens come on Drag Race and just stick a hoop skirt down there, pray that the hoop doesn't show, and don't add any extra ruffle. It's a very standard pageanty gown. I think the stones would have helped if she had left them on. And to be honest, I don't think that she should have taken them off anyway. She should have just done it. However, Lexi calling her out in front of the entire room as well as the cameras forced them to do something about it. And I appreciate that Lexi was thinking about the integrity of the competition, because producers love to just give passes and blind eyes to people that they like and that they want to keep. Where Lexi said, no, we're gonna all do this fairly because none of us used our outside stuff, so you don't get to either. And I appreciated that about Lexi. To me, this was another safe gown. I put it at number 8. Next up, we have Jules in an extremely rouged garment. So y'all can't get mad at me. I think the ruching is really cool and intricate, and I commend her for doing all of these individual panels, because you can see where she's paneled everything, where everything has been worked to death. And that's kind of the problem, is I think it's been overworked in some places. The fit and cut of this is immaculate. I think where the breasts are is a part that's overworked, and I think this neck scarf thing is also a little overworked. I just wish it was a little smoother here on the breast, if it was going to be in these Madonna cups, or just do a sweetheart neckline for this. But otherwise, I think this shows an immense amount of creativity with her ability to create something. It shows her skills in construction. Design-wise, it has been seen before on many a red carpet, but I don't mind that because a drag queen being able to do this is impressive to me. I put her at 6. Next up is Joella. Woof. This is number 14, Booger Boots. I think the shell fabric was a mistake. This is the least expensive looking fabric that was on that table. It's in a beautiful color. Maybe if it had been layered with like an organza or a tulle or a silk to add depth to this fabric, I think maybe that would have been interesting. The seaming on the edge of this bodysuit is rough and it does not read opulent at all. Plus, those hems are puckering. It is so bad from a construction point of view, as well as a design point of view. I did appreciate her having an entire meltdown in Untucked, and I thought that was kind of hilarious that she said she's a drag icon known for her fashion in LA. I was doing drag in 2015 and I stopped in 19, but I still follow a lot of my old friends on social media. I think I've seen Joella's name on a flyer one time. Just once, because I recognize her name, and I remember one of the queens at Hamburger Mary's talking about her, just generally that she was going to be at a show when someone asked who was there. I don't know her at all, and I live in SoCal. I follow a lot of icons in this area. This is the first time I've heard of her name, and a lot of the girls that I follow also have never heard of her before. She's acting so main character, and it's great for TV, but the drag delusion is crazy. Especially if you're gonna read the girls and say that their looks and numbers are not giving when this is what you make. Next is Corey King, and there were a lot of comments about this girly. Y'all gonna be so mad at me. I turned up to this. This is so good to me. She was going for an old Hollywood look, but to be honest, I saw this as something that I think Cardi would wear. Put Cardi in that dress and it would look like something she would easily go to something in. And y'all can say whatever you want. This is purely my opinion. I think Corey's drag is very low key. I dare say sometimes it comes off as mall drag. And I believe with my whole heart, soul, and pussy that if she were told, get in the most expensive gown you have, it would be this. This is what I believe her idea of opulence is. And opulence is different for everyone. For some people, opulence is $10,000, and some people's version of opulence is $100. Opulence is in the eye of the beholder, and because this has her drag stamp on it, this is believably opulent for her. And that's not a read, that's just what I perceive. I think she looks really cute. I love the bag that she's made. I think this shoe is perfect with the garment. And hoochie dresses are very in right now. I'm gonna have the same drag delusion that some of y'all had about Corey last week, where you put her in the top. My drag delusion is that this was number 2 for me. I was extremely confused about her critiques because she got a lot of mixed ones. And I didn't understand why she was bottom 3 when they were definitely worse garments than hers. And hey, listen, sex workers are valid and their high fashion is valid. Next is Lana in this extremely matte red fabric with only a few sparkly pieces of interest on the chest and on the neck. I'm gonna be real, I did not love this. I think it doesn't look opulent. The matteness of this fabric really takes away from the glamour aspect. It is slightly well designed, and I do think the shape of it is lovely. I wish that it wasn't so bunched up in the center. I think that draws my eyes to it a little bit. And the way that the cape looks kind of crunchy chunky is also not visually appealing to my eyes. I think it was meant to lay like a silk, but because this is a denser fabric, it doesn't sit that way. It just sits like a big bunch right here on the neck. And I think the way that it's been styled also cheapens it a bit. So this was, in my opinion, number 12. Next is Lexi referencing an actual fashion runway, which is so refreshing to me that someone is referencing something in real life. I think last year, Sasha Colby referenced a very famous burlesque striptease runway model. I forget what her name is. When she did that corset and pulling the boning right out the middle and then it came off, that was a reference to a very specific burlesque artist. I think using this particular lace is so beautiful with the details she did of the feathers on it. I think this is gorgeous to me. This is absolutely stunning and gorgeous, plus the very simple styling, the makeup that is snatched, the hair that is snatched. She looks good. And you know what? I love a hoochie dress now and then. I do think that she focused a little bit too much on the gimmick of the role as she walked down the runway, and maybe could have focused her attention on a couple other details, maybe adding a little more sparkle here and there. But this was extremely high for me because of how she did this and how she presented it and how snatched she looks. She looks opulent to me. This was number 4. Next out is Poor Lucky Stars, who I think really made a lot of mistakes. Y'all have eyeballs, and I don't need to dig too hard into this and really rip her apart. She went home this episode, which was not my fantasy at all. And Joella sitting there and telling her, I'm so sorry, I'm gonna be here next week and I'm sorry that I have to send you home, was great TV, but was also kind of snotty. I think there's other ways to share that opinion that you are going to win the lip sync without ripping somebody else apart and being like, sorry, you're gonna go home, girl. It sucks for you. It's in its own way kind of fierce, but also, again, snotty. I mean, the look is bad. I don't know what the intention was while she was cutting this up, what the design was in her head that didn't translate, but nothing about this is really good. Her makeup looks like it was applied with a piece of bread, and I think the largest mistake was changing her drag week 2, essentially. Because week 1 and 2 were all one big week in my thoughts. And I think this is the second real challenge of the competition. And she hasn't gotten notes to change her makeup. She hasn't gotten notes to change her silhouette or to give us a different design. This is an opportunity to show what your drag looks like at its highest caliber. This is not it. I feel bad for her because She doesn't look like herself, and this is not what the challenge called for. This was number 13 to me. Next is Lydia. I loved her reference point. I loved her reference point of Muppets as well as Horton Hears a Who. I think this yellow is really pretty, but in my opinion, it's a little overworked and kind of the same way that Jules's was, but a little more egregious here. There's definitely a lot of overworking in the back, in the neck, in the way that the arms are constructed, even in this hat. I love the funkiness of this Dorito chip hat, but I think the hair was wrong for what this called for. I think the hair needed to be a big up scoop in a kind of maybe messy bun. And this is more of a fashion take than a body policing. I think the slit all the way to the underwear is kind of inappropriate for opulence. Rich people don't show black underwear on any runway or in any catwalk or red carpet. If they're gonna show underwear, it's gonna usually be a nude, and I don't really think that's a part of her brand. And so on that end, I think the slit was too high, but I appreciate what was done to it on its own level. This was in the number 11 slot for me. Again, just because it looks a little overworked. There's fluff and feathers in places that I don't think it needed to be. And a lot of people are talking about how Corey looked like Big Bird going to the street corner. Lydia looks like Big Bird from the 5 a.m. gig. Next out is Anya doing what I only interpreted as if Yzma from Ember's New Groove stunned in a red carpet event. She looks very old Hollywood to me. She looks extremely opulent. I love the celebration of her drag and what she does. This is very, very Anya to me, and I love the way that it's styled. The feathers that she used for this boa is beautimous. I love the cigarette holder. That is something that a lot of people wouldn't think to do. And this hat, gorgeous. I love the applications of the jewels that she stole from Jules. And I think the general construction of this is quite nice. I really like the visual interest point of that triangle that's right underneath the bust. I've seen other queens try to do this on Drag Race and it doesn't always translate well, but this one did. And I think the scale of this reads opulent. This color is luxe and opulent. For me, this was number 3. Next is Sam Starr doing what was meant to be a Mae West tribute. And you know what? I do like this a lot. I'm not a big fan of the skirt and how bulky it looks from the hips down. That's just my own personal taste. And I also don't love this dance costume fabric that she used to construct the top. It looks a little obvious pageantry, but pageantry is her brand, so I can't really be mad at her. I just don't like how bulky all of that fabric is down there. It draws my eyes away from what this garment was trying to be. That being said, this was the best hat that I saw on the runway tonight, and I love the little fan that she made as well as all the accessorizations. To me, this was number 5. It was a very high safe. And finally, we have Susie Toot repping If Betty Boop Went to Hell and Was a Princess There. It looks silly. I don't like the costumey-ness of it all. Costumey is not bad on the runway. I don't have any problems with it, but I don't like this costume. I think it looks like a Halloween party, and that does bother me quite a bit. However, the construction is nice. I like this reverse cowl that you normally would see floating off the back as a front piece. It looks a little bit like a bib, but I don't hate it at the same time. I like a lot of the lines that she's done as well as her makeup, which is fun to me. I love, love, love her makeup, and I hope she doesn't change it for the judges. And overall, I think it's constructed well. It shows off her body well. I just don't like that it doesn't read opulent to me. It reads costume party. So to me, this is at number 10. I don't think it was egregious, but I don't think it was great either. And in hindsight, I might actually swap her with Lydia because I think Lydia's was constructed maybe a bit better. I don't know, because Lydia also had some odd choices with her textiles. The winner of the challenge is Sam, and of these 3, I agree with that. I would have probably given it to Lexi though. And in the bottom 2 is Lucky versus Joella to The Way That You Love Me by Paula Abdul. I don't remember the last time that Paula was featured on the show. Was it season 6 or did they have her again later on and I can't remember? Either way, I feel like it's been a minute. I really liked where Lucky started energy-wise. The problem for me is when the shoes came off. I don't like shoes coming off in a lip sync unless it's in a gospel number. Then I totally understand, take them off, jump with them in both hands, and jump all up and down that stage if you need to. But otherwise, try to keep your shoes on, and if you can't perform, in your shoes, you shouldn't have gotten them in the first place. And I liked overall what she did better. To me, Joella was pretty messy in her movements, and I didn't like her unsportsmanlike behavior of purposefully getting in the way to take up space. There is the other side that if Lucky saw that Joella was getting in her way, she should have moved and taken up just as much space. And I think if Lucky had not lost her shoes, I think it was very possible she could have stayed. But unfortunately, there was no way this girlie was ever gonna get that lever. As much as I and many others love her drag, I don't think she's connected with Rue and the producers in the same way that Joella has, who is making dynamic TV and is an agitator in the workroom, is genuinely rubbing people wrong from day one. And I think that is an important element of reality TV, is you have to have an agitator. Between her, Hormona, and Corey, we are going to get fed TV moments. And a part of that does excite me, but on the competition end, I want someone whose drag I connect with more to stay. So it was sad to see Lucky go, but I understand why she did. Next week is an acting challenge based off of iconic moments from Drag Race. I cannot wait to see this because the contestants have already been referencing the show a lot. Almost every confessional is a reference to a previous confessional or a previous moment from another season. So I think this is the right group of girls to do this with. And from what it looks like, Carson's back again. So is the hilarious Ross Matthews not with us this season? I wouldn't totally mind if it was Carson and TS. I think that they have better critiques, and I think Ross has outlived his time on Drag Race. I don't think a lot of his critiques are helpful or constructive, where I do think that Carson and his fashion point of view is very helpful. And TS being so motherly, so understanding of drag and its roots and what it is now, keeping current on the pulse of drag, is definitely a better guest judge to be rotating in every other week. What were y'all's thoughts on this challenge, and who was your winner? And remember, as always, to be kind to everyone as best as you can. We can be a little shady boots, but don't be mean or discredit anyone's work. And make sure to follow, because we are only 300 away from getting YouTube partner. So please, make sure to subscribe. And I will see y'all on the flip.